great product managers they typically say the most obvious things. Whatever I say about culture, everyone is going to be like, yaar, ye to gassy hai. But you're either a cultural fit or you're not. And there's no two ways around it. I could go argue with him and tell him that, see, boss, this is what the data is saying. What if you walk into the room and he says, how do you justify your salary? You're using technology to deliver financial services. That's essentially what fintech is trying to do, right? You can build a stellar product, but it can be easily copied in today's day and age. You have to get them from being just users to moving the needle to becoming advocates. Because if I go back to my CEO and tell him, here's an Excel dump, figure it out, he's going to be like, beta, मैं आपको पैसे क्यों दे रही हूँ? So when it comes to tier 2, tier 3 cities, there are some people, who everyone in the ecosystem trusts. Data guys make amazing product managers if they can crack that execution bit over there. Please don't look me up on Quora. I'm very embarrassed about some of the answers I've given over there.
Welcome, Kamalika. I think first and foremost, I would want to be super grateful to you that you took out time to give your insights to the cohort, and let's have a very candid conversation. And I think that's the structure of the guest sessions that we have done. So we'll try to ask you as difficult and as interesting questions as possible. And kids have gone through your profile, they would ask you questions on those lines, right? But to start the session, I just want to give some background of what Kamalika has done till now, at least to the little things that I know, right? So she started doing her engineering from SSN College of Engineering, which is a great college. By the way, just a reference trivia point, it is the same, Kamalika, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the same university started by Shiv Nadar, the founder of it.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Post that, she did her MBA from MDI Gurgaon, which is one of the prestigious colleges in the country. And since then, she probably joined her first role, which was with Axis Bank as a management trainee, where
my first role was actually with Temenos.
Right, I know that. I consciously skipped that. I actually skipped that. But yeah, so she spent 3 odd years at Axis Bank, where she became a credit card analytics manager and spent considerable time in the analytics space. Then she moved to PayU, and all of you know PayU, right? She joined there as an analytics manager, eventually rising through the ranks to become a strategy and analytics manager. So spent considerable amount of time in analytics, and then she moved her first product switch, right?
Yeah.
Joining as senior PM at CAMS. CAMS, you guys also know, it's the Mutual Fund Aggregation Authority of India, right? आपको CAMS से mail भी आते होंगे, बहुत सारे जब भी funds में invest करते होगे, right? And post that, I think she has already spoken about it. She has taken a plunge in entrepreneurship. So once again, and the least important detail in all of this is she's a 2-time LinkedIn top voice.
Yes, absolutely.
In this, right? So the way that we met was that I think we have been following each other since for a very long time, but unfortunately or fortunately in some way, right, we didn't speak, and there was this organization called Curate, which kind of brought us together. And since then we started talking about it, we got to know each other, and we had an event together, and that's when I knew that the amount of respect that I had for her kind of grew like 10, 20, 30 points, 40 points, right? So once again, Kamalika, super excited to have you here, and I think everybody would love to kind of hear your words across. I think the structure of the session is very simple. The first 30 minutes, you have to bear with me. Yeah. And the remaining 30 minutes, I'll tell other people to kind of put their hands up, and they will ask you questions around it, right? So
absolutely.
So I think any starting words, if you would want to kind of put across, or we can just jump into this.
I'm just, so you were taking me through the entire course and how rigorous the course is. I think the last time I had something this intense was when I was doing my MBA. So the fact that you guys are not, and MBA was something that, I'd paid upfront money, so I could not drop out. But you guys have that, you have that option here to drop out now, but you're not doing that. So kudos to the dedication that all of you have. In this day and age, when all of us are running short of attention, I think what you guys are doing here, it's amazing. So to me, you guys are already, vastly successful over there. So I'd want to start off with that first. And thank you, Shravan, for hosting me here. But the first time that we interacted, I don't think you remember, was on this app called Clubhouse, where you were talking about product management. And I was just listening to him and I was like, yaar, ye banda to fadu hai, yaar. The way he speaks is like amazing, like really nice. The number one thing that they say product managers should be is great communicators. So yes, I got to witness that in Shravan way back when Clubhouse was a thing. So yeah.
Awesome, man. That's once again kind words coming from you. I'm not deserving of this much praise, honestly. But any which ways, the first question that I kind of want to kind of put across, you have had a very interesting career, at least in the analytics space, right? And that is something that you have done across organizations. Probably they had different kind of products, right? And eventually you made a plunge into product management, which probably is not very conventional. People think that they first become an APM and then they become a PM and then they essentially become an SPM. But you took it slightly at a later point in your career. So the first question that I just want to kind of put across is, ये कैसे हुआ? ये story क्या है? ये story ये किस तरह से हुई? और second चीज, जब आपने ये decision लिया, you were already at a place where you were doing very well. You could have grown to a director of analytics at some place, and you could have led that kind of a life, right? So it's a very hard decision, even financially and even from a mental point of view. कि यार, you want to switch to a different arena, right? So how did that switch happen? और इसमें आपकी क्या learnings थी? मैं बस इतना ही जानना चाहता हूँ. Maybe that's the starting point where I want to kind of start this. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I think when I started out in analytics was right outside, from my B school. And it was a very interesting journey because my internship was I was a product intern technically. But I realized that if I want to really solve problems and get better at identifying the exact problem I want to solve, that'll have a huge impact. It's not just solving any problem, right? You want to solve a problem that has a big impact. So thing that you really have to be very great at doing, especially in the field of finance, is being able to read data. So for me, the one thing I realized during my internship was that because I was not a fresher when I did my MBA, right? I'd already worked as a developer and a product analyst almost nearly 4 years before I did my MBA. So that was also like one pivot over there. And as a result of that, I was pretty good at Excel. Like I could manipulate and do stuff with it, but that interpretation part of it, interpreting and figuring out what's really happened, what's a problem that I should be worth looking into and looking under the hood for. That was something as an intern, I still had to go back to the analytics team and ask them, ki, bhaiya, tell me what is happening here. I don't understand this. What do I make sense out of this? And they would again go back, scrub the data from like 2-3 different places and then be like, okay, here's the full picture. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like they're like magicians to me at that point in time. I was like, they just, poof, came up with the answers for what I really wanted to do. And so I decided ki if I do convert the PPO at Axis Bank, one role I would definitely like to explore, even if it's for a brief while, would be that of an analyst. And at Axis, we had this management training program where we could go across the board for three months each and figure out if it's a good fit for us or not. Turned out the project that I did at Axis was crazy because we were building a database sales generator, a lead generator of sorts. So it was kind of an internal product by itself. And I could see the business impact. Like every time my model was used at the back end, we were able to track how much of a sales, how much an effort it took to convert that particular lead. So that was an amazing journey for me. But yes, over there I didn't have much of a product experience because everything from the conceptualization, the market research, even the development was something I was doing myself. So I didn't have to really liaise with too many people. I just had to make sure that because it was a sales team using it, I'm getting their constant feedback and reiterating and and fine-tuning the model. From there, when I went into the B2C side of things, which was on the credit card analytics side, is when things completely shifted. Because if you're doing something like a campaign analytics, you have to understand the users that are using your product at the end of the day, and the other side you need to understand their motivations also, which data cannot tell you. You'll probably have to sit through with the call center folks and figure out ki acha, this is the reason that they called and they were so annoyed. So those sort of things also were some things that I had to train myself, that what they say that you have to have empathy. I had to train myself for that. This happened for a good 3.5 years, and then I moved to PayU, and PayU is a very data driven organization. Even Axis Bank was a very, very highly data driven organization. PayU was a step more than that. I think we had it was a very transparent organization also, to the extent that if I had a difference of opinion even with the CEO, I could go argue with him and tell him that, see boss, this is what the data is saying. I know intuitively you have a lot more experience, but on the ground this is what's happening, and they will let you run with those experiments. So while initially I was just doing analytics for some of our new businesses, they realized that let's push the boundary. And at PayU they do this quite a lot. So if they see that it's like a typical car ka gear, no? You see that, hai, this gear works fine, so I will always go into this gear, and then as I start figuring things out, if I want to switch, I will switch to another gear. But my preferred gear is always going to be third gear or something like that. So, and you keep putting a lot of pressure on that third gear all the time. So that's what kind of happened to me at PayU, where they started loading me with some of the execution related tasks also. So in a way, I started acting like a product manager way before I was actually a product manager. So, making all of those calls across the ops team, with the engineering team, with the actual product managers who are getting feedback from the market, the sales team and all of that. But that was what made me feel ki it gave me that confidence boost rather than anything else ki हाँ यार ये भी कर सकते हैं. So honestly, I had no reason for leaving PayU whatsoever. But when the opportunity came up, and at CAMS it was taking me back home as well, and it was with the account aggregator business, which was just picking up in 2022. So I said, why not? Let's give this a chance over here. So that's how the transition kind of happened for me. And because I had like most of the soft skills for being a product manager already, thanks to PayU, I think that transition wasn't so hard for me over there.
Awesome. That's a very super cool journey. So, but इसमें एक बात बहुत interesting है कमलिका, आपने एक बहुत अच्छी बात की. Where you said that I left PayU at a very cushy place where I was doing something which I liked. I liked the peers, the people I'm working with. तो ये motivation कहाँ से आता है? मतलब like a lot of times people have this question, and I think there are senior PMs in the cohort, there are PMs in the cohort who are at a particular place but probably not excited towards the work they're doing, but they're very happy with it, right? They have the money. It's not like the people around them are like bad people or something like that. They are okay, but probably they're learning per minute, how you want to put it out. It's not that high. तो वो motivation, वो sense कहाँ से build होती है? मतलब how do you, like अब आप entrepreneurship में plunge ले रहे हो? It's not very easy, right? It's absolutely not easy, right? तो ये और I don't know, this kind of experience that you have, right? ये कहाँ से develop होता है? Because बहुत सारे लोग अपने आप को यही बोलते रहते हैं कि यार कि I should not make this choice because I am comfortable here. Maybe when the risk appetite is going down, और बिल्कुल जब मेरे लिए सब कुछ net neutral हो जाएगा, उस टाइम पे मैं जीवन पे कॉल लूंगा, right? Which essentially at a lot of times leads to you not getting that opportunity, or probably you losing out on that opportunity in any sense, right? So what are your learnings as a person in this space? What keeps you motivated? What keeps you driven as a person? That's one. And the second question that I want to kind of ask about is कि इस पूरी जर्नी में ना कुछ चीजें होती है जो इंसान अपने साथ लेके जाता है as principles, right? Like being consistent. One of the things that we both relate to is that we are consistent in our own ways, right? Maybe you write a lot of content, you go to events, I record videos for my YouTube, right? And things like तो ये इसी तरह consistency being one factor, what are the few essential attributes or principles that you've taken which has shaped you into the person that you're today? Yeah.
So I'll answer the first question, which was that, I was at a comfortable place at PayU, I was doing well, but still I took that pivot. And why?
Yeah.
I think in a huge part, the culture of the organization that you are a part of plays a huge role in that. And you're either a cultural fit or you're not. And there's no two ways around it. And at PayU, I think that culture was always there. People strongly believed in, so there's this concept called Peterson's principle, which says that you reach your level of max incompetence. And when you do that, you need to figure a way out of it. And the best way at PayU to figure a way out of your max incompetence level is to keep trying something new. You keep experimenting every other day. That open culture was there. Like even if I didn't want to really leave PayU, if I wanted to make a pivot internally into product management at PayU, that option would have also been there. But I still say this to my ex-boss at PayU, that the only reason I left was because I was getting a chance to be a part of account aggregator, which was not something PayU was looking to get into at that moment in time. Sure, they may come on board later on, but at that point in time, becoming an account aggregator, there was just no payoffs that anyone could see or any synergies that they could extract out of it at that moment. So that was literally the only reason that I told them that, I'll be moving out. But I did tell them, and I have been, kind of going back and forth with my ex-peers at PayU, telling them that, you can make advantage of this. You can use this license and then get on an account aggregator and then, do this that we were working on and stuff like that. So that, I think that thing for me, the fact that you don't want to get comfortable was ingrained into me thanks to the culture that was there at PayU. And that's something most of us miss that, we always keep thinking we'll stay in this organization for X period, take at least 2 promotions and like get a hike of at least like 10% every year or something like that. But what we don't realize is then we're getting complacent in a way. If we get too comfortable in any place, we're actually getting a little complacent over there. So PayU is a place that does not like that at all. So I think that was one. And the second question was, whoops, I forgot what this. Oh yes, what did I take away from all of this? So on what did I take away from all of this? I've already mentioned cultural fitment is like a huge thing for me now. I think whatever I say about culture, everyone is going to be like, "Yaar, ye to gassy hai," because unless you're placed in that position where you realize how important and how much culture shapes you, you can't really appreciate it. It's like, to give a very rudimentary sort of an analogy, you have a room freshener in your room. Until and unless you turn it off, you don't really know the stench that's surrounding your room. So that's really how culture is. You don't appreciate it when it's on. When it's off is when you be like, oh shoot, man, I should have had like a better culture, or I should have built like a better culture. So for me, building a culture, a place where the culture supports growth, the culture does not make you get complacent, is something that's really high. The second thing for me is experimentation. I mean, as a product manager, you can build a very great product, and in today's digital age, most things can be copied. Like if Shravan has built such a huge community around of product managers around him, I can use his playbook, and possibly I may not reach up to his point, but I could possibly at least imitate him to reach up to 70% and encroach some of his market over there.
Yep.
So I think that is something we have to be very aware of. You can build a stellar product, but it can be easily copied in today's day and age. Until and unless you're open to experimenting to figure out what is it that my customers really appreciate.
Yep.
What, like you mentioned, right? You've built this community here where they're putting in at least 10 to 12 hours a week despite their day jobs.
Yeah.
And unless you're experimenting with the right kinds of, the case studies that you have, or the guests that you're getting onto your cohort, and bringing that value add every day and taking that feedback from your cohort, it's not scalable. After a point, you're going to plateau, and you don't want that. So I think for me, experimentation and listening to what your co-customers are saying is the second thing. And the third thing, which I think I learned from my days back at Axis, is that the initial adopters of your product that you built may not always be the best advocates for your product. And this was like a very brutal learning for me, because when we were building some of our data products that was there, the initial customers that we went to were the head of sales, were the head of that entire, a particular region. Like if I'm saying North region, then they're taking care of entire Delhi NCR, as well as all the way up to like, Uttaranchal and stuff like that. They think at a very high level, but the people who are going to actually mass use it, like the branch managers and people like that, they don't think at that. They think about what is my next quarter's or next month's sales target, and can this help me achieve it or not. So they, until and unless they see that value, they're not going to advocate for your product. So the minute we made that pivot and told them that, okay, we're adding also a potential business revenue that you will get through this, then they started advocating for our product. Whereas, the heads of businesses, for them, it was about, what is my concentration risk? Am I covering all industries? Do I have a penetration in these market, which is a growing market, which is a falling market, and stuff like that. So I think the early adopters of your product, they'll give you very good feedback on fine-tuning it. But if you want advocates, if you want to reach the mass market, the people who come after the early adopters, you'll have to get them from being just users to moving the needle to becoming advocates. So yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. I think two things that I kind of took away from this answer, and this is something that's like a self-validation for me. One of the things that Marcus Aurelius kind of wrote about this in his book Meditations, which he said, resilience in the face of discomfort brings comfort. So that's a very funny thing to say. And the second thing that I took away from this is that what we have spoken consistently in the cohort, that great products are never 0 to 1. They are built by DX, and that integral of the DX brings that X value, right? So you have to be consistently focused on experimentation and things like that, right? So I just want to kind of ask you this third question, and I think this is a question I ask every guest, right? Because every guest gives me very different answers to this question, right? What do you think, right? What do you even mean by a great product manager versus someone who is an average product manager or a good product manager? What kind of sets them apart in your journey, in your ways, that these are the people I've looked up to for whatever reasons? It doesn't necessarily have to be just like skills. It can be the way how they conduct themselves, how they manage themselves, right? And how they motivate a team, right? So what are those few aspects that you admire and possibly see that if ye attributes say Don Bradman saw Sachin Tendulkar play once and he said like, he's a reflection of me. राइट? तो मैं ये जानना चाहता हूँ कि आपके एक्सपीरियंस में, बिकॉज सिंस यू वर्क विद folks from the analytics side, from the product side, leadership, everyone, what do you look into a great product leader or a great product manager in general, right? And the second thing is, what are those few things that kind of set them apart and you say, nahi yaar, this is the person I want to be around with? Yeah.
I'll start with the second question first, simply because it reminds me of my last manager at Payu, Himang Dattani. He's currently the CEO of the company, but amazing man, and amazing because he never shies away from having a tough conversation. And it can be a tough conversation for him, it can be a tough conversation with him, but he's always going to make sure that he has those tough conversations first. And a lot of people used to find it very intimidating, because what if you walk into the room and he says, how do you justify your salary? Like, your product failed, how do you justify your salary? And I've had those conversations with him. But the fact that, he would make you think about, he's not making you defensive at all. He's just trying to make you think and to come up with a reason, not for a reason for the failure, but a way to figure out beyond that. How do you pivot beyond that? That is how you justify your salary. Yeah, failures will happen to everybody. Like, it's a given. You try something, one of it, like you try 10 things, at least 5 of it will fail, maybe 5 of it will do well. But you don't see those first 5 failures and be like, yeah, fine, I'm not doing anything more, right? You have to have someone who pushes you, chabi ghumate types, and tells you justify your salary. Tell me, okay, this has failed, fine. We wasted 5 crores on this, fine. How are you going to help me get 10 crores now out of this? So that is, I think, someone who makes a very great leader also. I think a lot of the times when we think of leadership, we just want someone who's giving us a very sympathetic ear when things fail and cheering us on when we're doing well and stuff like that. But really someone who can motivate you like how Himang does. I think that's what I think makes a great leader, great product manager over there. And on some of the other things that I've seen a lot of others also do, they know how to read the room and they know how to spin a yarn. Like, if I can see, like this cohort is very engaged over here. I can see like most of you have turned on your camera. You're all like intently listening. But let's say that, you guys were losing interest. Is there a way that I can share like a personal anecdote that makes all of you laugh? It's relatable to all of you. And then I bring you back into the room. So that I think is something that most great product managers, I've seen them do. And they weave that yarn around like that pretty well. That's something that I'm still trying to learn. And I think nowadays, a lot of these improv classes, they're actually helping people do that really, really well. So I think that is another, like thing. And the third thing, which is going to be a little counterintuitive, is that I think great product managers they typically say the most obvious things. They're not saying something that's, very out of the box or like something totally hatke or something like that, but they'll say something that's very obvious to most of us. It's just that we probably wouldn't have been able to verbalize it or put it in that context as well as they did. So for me, I think that is also something that makes a great product managers. Of course, you need to be someone who can, identify the right problems to solve. We covered that, so I'm not going to harp on that again.
Yeah,
But
yeah, for sure.
yeah.
For sure. अब एक लास्ट सवाल मेरे before I open it to the crowd. थोड़ा सा ना, I
Absolutely.
really want to understand your journey and why did you start writing? Why was it even critical, right? You were doing so well, right? तो अचानक से लिखने का मन क्यों किया? उसका genuine reason क्या था? और अपने आप को motivate कैसे किया कि over time you consistently wrote, built a niche, built an audience, right? वो journey के बारे में थोड़ा सा जानना चाहता हूँ. मतलब would love to hear from you because that is something I think most people speak about, but I want to know that those deeper things, that what motivated you at a point when you had like 100 followers or 500 followers or maybe 1,000, and you started, there was no engagement, there was nothing, nobody interacting with you, right? But you still motivated yourself to do that again and again, and you're still doing it, right? That's something I am super amazed, and that is so splendid about you. Please, over to you. Yeah.
So I'll be honest, I've always been someone who's more of a written form of communicator. Like, my first story was published when I was in first standard for my school magazine, and thereafter every year, if my story was not published, I would take it as a personal insult. I've always been someone who's loved writing. But on LinkedIn, I started, and you're right, I started writing when I had like some 100, 400 followers. I don't know. I don't even remember. But the reason I started writing was because I realized midway through my stint at Temenos, around 2.5 years in, that I'm not that great a developer. Let's admit it. But I do have good conversations with the business guys that were there. And it was very interesting because I understood nothing about banking at that point in time. and we were building a banking as a service stack over there. So yeah, like world apart for me. But it was very interesting, and I forgot that one thing common for all the business guys was that they all had an MBA. So I was like, ठीक है, MBA करते. I started preparing for my CAT and realized that quants, logical reasoning, verbal was like something I'll do reasonably well in. All the mock tests were giving me a fair indicator that I will get in the 98, 99 wala bracket. So I may not get an IIM ABC. ठीक है, was not that aspiring also at that point in time. I'll admit I wasn't that ambitious. And then I was like, ठीक है, I'll settle for a Lucknow or a Kozhikode or an Indore and an MDI also. चलेगा मेरे लिए. But if I have to crack that, CAT exam is not the only thing. Everybody has a GDPI round. Everybody has a written assessment round. And what do they ask in all of those? Current affairs and business knowledge. जिसमें I was a literal zero. Now, because of someone who always, understood by writing it out, I started writing. And I started writing on Quora. I started writing on LinkedIn also. Quora mein, unfortunately, I used to write even before, and I used to write a lot of these generic life-related random nonsense. Please don't look me up on Quora. I'm very embarrassed about some of the answers I've given over there. But they're very funny. They're very funny. They're quirky and stuff like that. So I started writing business affairs and stuff like that on Quora. But because I had a followership on Quora, it intimidated me to be wrong over there. LinkedIn, on the other hand, there was nobody who was following me or was connected with me over there apart from my own set of, really close friends. So I was like, even if they judge me, that's fine. They'll make fun of me for a day or two and then they're going to move on. So that's cool with me, man. That's how I've grown up all my life. I'll deal with that. So that's how I started on LinkedIn. But what I didn't realize is that people from the industry are going to comment on it. Like that was something new to me.
Yeah.
And when they started commenting, I started realizing that, oh shoot, I can think like this also. Oh, this is also an aspect that I should look into. Oh, this is something I have no clue about what they're talking. So let me read up. That started fueling my curiosity and because of that, my understanding started getting better and better and better to the point where when I was giving both my IIM Kozhikode and my MDI interview, everybody in the panel who was there in my GD panel said, dude, you slayed that GD. Like, I'm pretty sure you'll get selected. I didn't get selected in IIM Kozhikode, but anyways, MDI was like really good. It turned out really well for me as well. But even the professors, so I was the last person in my GD panel to be interviewed. It was right before, so the interviews are all like overshot their time frames, and what should have gotten over by 2 o'clock, which is lunchtime, mine was getting over at 4 o'clock. So they were starving, I was starving, and yet they said that, you know what, we came in with the frame of mind thinking that we'll roast you because we were so annoyed, but you still had that conversation really well with us. You took it in your stride. So that kind of worked out well for me. But yeah, so I think communication or writing for me has always been more of an intrinsic motivator, where for me, my end agenda is that I am going to learn something new by writing this out. And the fact that, over time it evolved because people would come back and say that, you know what you had written that day in that article, I used this in my interview and I cracked the job. And I was like, my God, I didn't know this can be so satisfying. So that's what keeps me, I keep thinking that even if no one is reading, like no one is reacting, or even if it's, no one's commenting, it's okay because maybe that one person is going to find value out of it. Yeah. So I always write for that one person in mind.
Awesome. That's super cool. I think one of the things every one of you should kind of take away is that most people who are genuinely at least try to become better humans in life, they make fun of them in their failures, even if they are accomplished that way. So that's something that she's doing so stupendously. But what I would do now is, Janta, please start raising your hands, right? I would essentially start picking up one from the who is raising their hands, and I will essentially try to put them up in the spotlight. Awesome. Okay. So let me start with Khyati. Khyati, I'm just moving you to the spotlight. Give me a second. Yes. Over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Kamalika, for I just have this mind, Kamalika. So
that's all right. That's all right. That was one of my interview questions at MDS. So yeah, you can call me Kamalika. That works, yeah.
Okay. So thank you for sharing your time. I personally wanted to know, like from your own perspective and experience, like what is this analytics, metrics, and this business intelligence is all about, and how they are connected with each other?
Oh, that's a great question, actually. So when it comes to analytics, there is data analytics, and then there's business analytics also, which is where, that there's an overlap with the business intelligence part of it. So data analytics, they focus a lot more on the building those data models out. And you have like 20 different input metrics that are coming in, and you're trying to figure out which one of these 20 predicts how much of the output. You don't really know what those input metrics means whatsoever. You're just using all the data that's available to you just to make sense for the output or the outcome that you were expecting. think. They work very closely with data engineers also, because for them, one of the things that they are tasked with is how well prepared are you for answering the questions that people are asking you. So for which you need to have data lakes, you need to have proper data marts, you need to be able to access them in a good way as well. So that's what data analytics guys do. So they run data models, they build data models, they work with the data science teams also, and they work with the data engineers over there. Then we come to the business intelligence part of it, which has like a slight overlap with the business analytics side of things. When it comes to business intelligence, it's all about making sure, like for example, if I'm a bank, and I'm running the credit card department, I would want to know how many credit cards have I acquired in the day, how many of them have they activated, how many of them are giving us recurrent revenue, are they coming back every day and swiping and using, how much is that monetary value going up or down. So all of these are kind of standard metrics that move the business needle, right? But you need someone to tell you all of this on a day-to-day basis. You need someone to monitor all of this. So the business intelligence guys focus a lot more on building these dashboards out in a way that's intuitive for even a non-technical person to read. Because if I go back to my CEO and tell him, here's an Excel dump, figure it out, he's going to be like, beta, मैं आपको पैसे क्यों दे रही हूँ? So you need someone who actually does that work for you, builds it out in a way that's easy to understand for them, in a format that they understand, and is available to them when they need it. And also it gives you all those triggers and all of that. If in case something is going down, then you need to be alerted as well, right? So that's what the business intelligence guys do over there. Business analytics kind of sits in the interjunction where they're kind of responsible for these metrics. So they are also figuring out why the metrics didn't move. So you have a little bit of descriptive analytics over there where someone's already defined all these metrics for you and kept it. The business intelligence team has already defined those metrics. The analytics guys are going one level deeper in figuring out what changed in our ecosystem that this happened, and if it changed for the positive, is it something that we can replicate?
Okay, so it's something that internal, and then we have the medium that is regulating the metrics, and the external metric to read that okay, this is what has happened, say for last month, for the last week.
Correct.
Awesome. So now I would want Ramnik Bhai. Khyati, I would just move you away from the spotlight. I will bring Ramnik Bhai. Give me a second. So just a second. Yes. Hey, Ramnik Bhai. Ramnik Bhai is also a PM, by the way. Please.
Thanks, Shravan. Hi, Kamalika.
Hi, Ramnik.
It was nice to hear you, especially on the part where you said when you started writing and things turned up for you. And it's actually happening with me also. Even I have not shared that with Shravan. It has been 3 weeks and I've received a couple of offers now. And
that's amazing.
One just before this session started today. Just got, and I really don't know. I really don't know how it's happening. I think it is making an impact somewhere, and the learnings from this session is making it happen. And there's a lot of learning outside that also. In person, Shravan is making us think a lot. And Kamalika, just one question that I always look things from the perspective of entrepreneurship. So in past also I've done, and currently also I'm doing something besides also as a part of my own journey. So I've always looked for what happens in long term. So my question is, pre-COVID, we saw a disruption of digital things happen, especially in India. What is the next disruption which is going to happen in the fintech space? Since you already you do a lot of stuff in this space, I think it would be great to hear from you.
That's actually a very loaded question. And I've been researching on that front because a lot is happening. So for me personally, one place that I like to go to every time I want to ask such questions is to the guys at iSpert. So iSpert is India's think tank basically. And they were the brainchild behind UDI and UPI and all of that. So what are these guys working on? And they're working on a bunch of very, very interesting things, by the way. But in the immediate future, if I had to predict what would possibly pick up really well and pick up steam in the coming 12 to 15 months, because I honestly, I can't think beyond that at the moment. But one interesting area is that everyone is realizing that unsecured lending, it was good till it lasted, but it has its own, drawbacks over there. So people are scaling back, and RBI has already, made sure that people are scaling back on that. So the other thing that's there is secured lending, and the best untapped section over there are MSMEs. And so people are trying to figure out various different ways and how can we reach out to these MSMEs over there. For example, RBI is now, so they're all set to launch their frictionless credit platform now. And the kind of queues that they're using, right? It's crazy. Like if this is one of the things that I was writing to the RBI for as well in one of my white paper, is that these farmer producer organizations that are there currently, nobody is trying to lend to them, but these guys have like a huge potential if you give them the right set of tools to scale their operations manyfold. And we keep saying that India is not that productive, right? But if they had the money to have all of these sort of tools, our productivity will also increase accordingly. So what are some of the points that we can use? One of the things is the government already has satellite information, they have weather information present with them already. They also have all of these mandi information, that's like how much of movement is happening in all of these mandis. They have the core inflation that's coming in from all our retail products as well. So all of these signals together can actually give them good predictive this thing about the kind of output or the outcomes monetarily that we can expect from these FPOs if they had these kind of tools. So your underwriting becomes much more, based on the future cash flow projections, which currently was not there. It's coming in now. So that's, I think, these agri-tech lenders and these MSME lenders that are there, I think they're going to find their final product market fit in 2024, simply because the economic conditions, the digital conditions and data and all of that is now finally flowing into the system. That is one. Another area which I hope personally takes off is what I am working on, which is to help women become financially responsible. And we're seeing a lot of this happening nowadays. Till about, I think, 2020, we honestly didn't, most women, even like I would say my family is an exception, but even in my immediate friend circle, even though we were all earning the same amount, none of them would actually take any of the financial decisions for themselves. They're like, Papa ne bola ye karne ke liye, or my husband will do this for me, so I give him the money. In some cases, some of the women I've spoken to, they even give their paycheck to their father-in-laws, which just means that you are not really financially responsible. You're not really financially independent. So we're trying to, and we're seeing a lot of, RBI is also coming up with a lot of this. So RBI recently ran a tech sprint called Swanari, where they were trying to figure out, so RBI does a very good job in this, wherein they find a problem statement and then they call for people to, kind of solve for it. And we saw like a lot of, like some of the demonstrations I saw were doing a very good job of using alternate data for these women and figuring out ways to help them with their financial planning. First of all, bringing that mindset is a difficult thing, but they're on helping them to build that financial plan. That is, I think, a huge area. And we've seen this in the case of Bangladesh, where, most of the women are employed over there. They take care of their own finances. And so the per capita GDP has also been increasing over there. So I'm pretty sure that is also something that's going to pick up a lot. Another thing that I would really, fingers crossed, hope for is that account aggregator becomes mainstream, like how UPI has become. Because I really believe that the power of account aggregator is that it can give all of us like a single dashboard of our entire financial portfolio. And that's very powerful. That's, I think, the first step towards becoming financially responsible as well. So yeah, these are kind of the three things that top of my mind. And Ramnik, thank you so much. This is a question very close to my heart. So yes, thank you so much for that.
Thanks. Pleasure to hear that from you, Kamal.
Awesome. So what I would do next is, Sonali, I would bring you on. Let me just remove Ramnik Bhai and bring you on. Give me a second. Please, Sonali, go for it. Yes.
Hi, Kamalika.
Hi.
First of all, I related to you very closely because I was a developer और रोज सुबह उठ के यही लगता था कि ये तो मैं पूरी जिंदगी नहीं कर पाऊंगी. तो I decided कि ठीक है, थोड़ा explore करते हैं, and I went into product management. I work as a product analyst right now, but जो काम है वो that is more towards data analyst only. And I find myself buried in Excel sheets. So, I am not able to understand the data very well. So, I don't know how to understand it, and I don't know how to. I've taken courses, I've done everything, but usko samajhna aur uske sath, basically, how do I work with it? How do I not find myself very worried about all the data, and how do I make sense out of it?
Sonali, this is a very, very interesting question. Simply because in my last organization at CAMS, we had hired a very young sort of a chap and told him, you're going to be a product analyst. And he's like, I know nothing about this. Like, what do you, like, SQL and I have no relationship whatsoever. Yeah. So then I had to tell him, the first thing that I made him do was to go through our entire, it was a very, I know probably he hates me for it now, but it helped him later on, which was I made him go through the entire database, describe all the tables that are there. So there's a describe function in SQL, which tells you what all fields are there, what all, the attributes of those fields are and all of that. I made him do that first. And then once we had all the tables and what all, the fields that are there in that, I started making him sit down and write down, intuitively what he thinks each of these does. And if he doesn't know, to actually go back to the engineer and ask him, what does this field denote? And if it is like, it has like a set of enums, what do those enums mean? So when he did that activity, he didn't, it's impossible to go through all the tables. I told him that at the beginning itself. But there are some key tables that you keep going back to and forth a lot of the times. Like you'll see 80% of your time going back and forth to these tables and some allied tables that they refer to.
Correct.
So if you know that and that encompassing circle that's there, you should be able to crack that question that you were asking, right? Like, I'm not able to understand what it means. You will need the help of an engineer. I'm not kidding about that. Your data engineer is the go-to guy for you over here. And if he's not cooperative, it's going to be hard for you. But that is really like nowadays, I'm of course I'm out of camps, but if I do go back to Om and tell him, Om, tell me what is happening with the success rates for this particular attribute, he'll be able to figure it out for me, and he'll tell me exactly where the drop off is, simply because he spent, the initial he did this for a whole month and he cursed me that entire month. I can guarantee that to you, because it's an activity, it's very monotonous an activity, and no one really wants to do that. But once he did it, he didn't need anyone else's help in like trying to figure out when someone comes to him with a problem statement. He knew at least where to go to get that data. Then you have to figure out how you splice and dice the data, how do you do these joins, how do you figure out, the different ways that you pivot the table and all of that. That can also be done in Excel. You don't, like, if it's not too heavy a database, that is. So I think SQL and Excel is like, should be every data analyst, every product analyst's best friend over there. But yes, you should be able to describe all the tables like it's the back of your hand.
So yeah, just adding one more point, Sonali, here. So my journey in Blackbuck was I was an analyst, then I became a data product manager. So the thing that what she's saying is absolutely correct, because when I built their business intelligence entire model, which was essentially, it had a BI layer on top. There was a tool called Looker. But I think the bigger thing that I had to take away was the fact that, do I really understand how the tables work? What are normalized tables? What is normalization happening across different tables, right? What is that one variable or this one column essentially? Where does it tie to? What's the primary key? And it's a hard thing. It's not an easy thing. You will have to spend like 2 months, 2.5 months just to understand the veracity and the size of the tables that you have, right? But once you do that, I think the next part becomes slightly easier for you, because you always have context. Oh, ये यहाँ से आ रहा है, ये यहाँ से आ रहा है, इसका ये मतलब है, ठीक है? Just adding over there, ठीक है? Awesome. Next, I would ask Ashu Bhai. Ashu Bhai, I will bring you in. Give me a second. Yes. So Ashu Bhai, Kamalika is a
Hi,
senior
Ashu.
already.
Hi, Kamalika.
And please, Ashu Bhai, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Shanviya. Hi, Kamalika. Good evening. Thanks a lot for coming. And you are super eloquent and you write beautifully. So this is one thing I admire about you. So Kamalika, my question is totally about B2C fintech products. As of now, the users are more concentrated in the tier one cities.
Yeah.
However, there is a big gap in tier 2 and tier 3, जहाँ पे बहुत सारे users हैं. But वहाँ पे जो lacuna है, that is the trust factor, right?
Yep.
So how, as a product manager, we can create products that can bridge this gap, and probably tier 2 and tier 3 people are more accustomed to this fintech products?
This is actually a beautiful question, and I'm going to share a case study that we had worked on when I was a part of the account. I'm still a volunteer with the account aggregator ecosystem. But so when it comes to tier 2, tier 3 cities, there are some people, who everyone in the ecosystem trusts. If you go to the village, it's probably the village ka mukhya. If it's a small town, then you'll have like a lot of these local, they're like the leaders of those local places. And you'll have to be able to get them on board. So one thing that we had done, this was an experiment that Axis Bank had done on the account aggregator ecosystem. So Axis Bank has, and by the way, I'm not just sharing the story because I was an ex-Axis employee, but it's genuinely a very great use case that they came up with. So most banks have something called Bank Mitra. So what a Bank Mitra does is typically they go to each of these villages who don't have access to a net banking, they don't have access to ATMs, or in general, the nearest branch is probably like 20 kilometers away for them. So every week, what happens is the Bank Mitra comes to each of these banks, each of these villages that are there. And it could be that, their children are staying in the city, they've deposited some money to them or something like that. But they don't know if that money's reached their account or not, if they can even use their card to make whatever purchases that they want to. So this is where what Axis Bank had done is they'd given a tab to the Bank Mitra, and the tab essentially had an account aggregator system fit it into there, and basis your mobile number and all of that, it will just fetch your entire bank statement and it will tell you कि हाँ ठीक है, इस दिन पे भैया ने आपको पैसे दे दिए थे, तो आपके अकाउंट में अभी के लिए इतना है. So when they started seeing that, they also started getting curious कि ये क्या है, आपने OTP हमसे लिया, क्यों लिया? So that kind of was like we realized that was our bank mitra had to be the proponent for our account aggregator ecosystem. So every time that they wanted to withdraw money or they wanted to send money, they had to check with their bank mitra, and then they started educating others and saying, so there was one person who had a computer in that entire village. All of them would go into the portal and be like, हाँ ठीक है, let's open the account aggregator का portal and see, हाँ ठीक है, मेरा mobile number डाल के I can see my amount there, so let me transfer it and stuff like that. So when the bank mitra comes, he'll tell them कि हाँ 3,000 रुपए transfer it to my son in school who's studying somewhere else and stuff like that. So that I think was like a very great case study where that there are one or two people that everyone trusts. So you've got to build that education for them so that they can take it forward. I think it has to be in the corporate world, we call it train the trainer program, but that's exactly what you need to do in these rural places.
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome.
Thank you, Kamalika.
So I'll bring Somi in. Somi, Nikhil, Tasin Bhai and Sukanya, I'll reach out to you also. But let's bring Somi in. Give me a second. Yes. Somi, please, over to you.
Thank you,
Yes.
Kamalika, for your time. बहुत
Hi,
relatable थे आप, especially finance वाले उसमें. Like somebody commented on me when I first installed Zerodha 2-3 years back. कि लड़कियों को
Congrats
financial
on that,
lesson
but
नहीं है.
yes.
हाँ, तो बहुत relatable, especially and the LinkedIn one. Like I remember last week we were studying UX in our cohort about the UX designing and all. I wrote a post on LinkedIn. Somebody messaged me saying, you know what, Soumya, बहुत अच्छा लिखते हो. ये जो आपने UX पूरा लिखा है ना, ये मुझे बहुत अच्छे समझ में आया. I was like, ये मेरा नहीं है, किसी और का ज्ञान है, but still I
नहीं
take the
ये आप ही का
credit.
ज्ञान है. आप
I know.
अननेसेसरी आप अच्छा लिखते हो सोमी. मेरी बात नहीं मानते. जब बाहर से कोई गेस्ट अच्छा आएगा वो आपको बोलेगा, उन्हीं की बात मानते हो, मेरी नहीं मानते. बस इतनी ही बात है. But over to you. Yes.
Yeah, so Kamalika, मेरा question ये था कि I started as a data analyst 9 years back, and then 2 साल पहले consciously मैं product analyst में move हुई because I wanted to understand the product side and how it impacts the business and all those things. फिर then ये product manager का कीड़ा आया that I can do better something in this because I understand the data, I read the data. Most of the folks in the organization, they can't read the data, like you said, they rely on some other team who has to give them. So I mean, did it help you in any of your interview in your initial days? Because even you could read the data very well, right? So did you have that upper hand, like, I understand the data and, I can make a better business decision, or I can, have the product impact better than any other guys?
So, before I answer your question, I'll be very honest. My PM interview at CAMS was very non-traditional. It was just like, I was chit-chatting with the CPO on a WhatsApp call. That's literally how it happened. And he kept asking me situational questions one after the other, just to see how I would have I faced such an issue in the past? And if I have, how will I kind of react to it? So then, like, when I eventually joined, I asked him, Ki, Shomendu, yaar, you didn't ask me any technical questions. Like, why was that? He's like, Dekh yaar, I've seen your CV, I've seen the work that you've done, and I want to quiz you on that to see, because the only difference that I could see was that you're good with all of the data part. You're obviously very good at. You can make sense of it. You can make a business case out of it as well. The only thing I wanted to check is, will you be able to execute on it or not? So that's the only skill set that I wasn't sure if you had. So I just want to quiz you on that alone. And when I figured ki haan theek hai, bandi soch pa rahi hai on the execution aspect, I was sorted ki haan theek hai, let's give her a chance into doing this, even though she's not been a PM before. So at that kind of, I take back from my entire journey at CAMS is that yes, data guys make amazing product managers if they can crack that execution bit over there. So I think that's what you should also start thinking of. And I'm sure because you've had so much of an experience back you up, you would have also unknowingly executed on stuff without really realizing that, acha haan theek hai, ye to humne banaya tha pura. So just go back and reflect on that and kind of start asking yourself those situational questions as well to see what will you do to make sure that you see the end of this of sorts. Did that make sense to you?
मेरा एक और follow-up question था कमल का.
हाँ.
Thank you for answering that. So actually मैं जब senior product analyst हूँ तो हम जब data देखते हैं and when we discuss with PMs, क्योंकि मैं data के perspective से देखती हूँ, right? So there was this situation where we were dealing with the retention and we had 2 types of users. तो मेरा argument था क्यों नहीं implement कर सकते हैं and all those things. So you as a PM, like, do you really rely on data कि अभी तो decision लेना है, or you think from all the perspective कि like this as a business we can't do it right now, even the users are getting impacted, हम एक set को target कर रहे हैं, एक को नहीं कर रहे हैं. How do you take that decision? क्योंकि मैं तो product analyst के perspective से बहुत ही मतलब offensive हो गई, इतना काम करा, ये करा, बताओ कर ही नहीं रहे. Because we had a target in Thomson Reuters that एक साल में आपको 2 product decision impact करने होते हैं. That you have to impact it. आपका कुछ analytics हो, आपने अपने user को समझा है. So I was very good in cracking the retention of the user, but वो implement नहीं करे. So how do you deal with such situation?
So, by the way, Shravan, you were not lying when you said they're going to ask you very tough questions. Huh? But I think at the end of the day, product managers also have to rely on data. The only extra thing that they have, which probably you don't have, is the customer sense over there, and for which they're probably relying on external data, which you don't have visibility on.
Right.
That you can obviously build visibility on too. If you have that willingness, you definitely can. So maybe it's not just the internal data that they're using to make their decisions. It's a juxtaposition of both of them. Ki what is the market wanting? And what is my internal customers, the best customer cohorts that I have, what are they saying? And when there's an overlap, they will kind of try to scale that out. So otherwise, I don't think what you're doing is perfectly right. I think that's the only thing that you're missing a piece of the puzzle. You're not seeing the full picture over there.
Sure.
Right.
So मैं एक point सिर्फ इसमें और add करूँगा. So when I started my journey in Flipkart, right, so my boss, right, who was the director of regional marketing, who had spent like 10 years in P&G, he was an IMB grad, and somebody who's coming into the cohort, who's going to be the next speaker, he said, Shravan, जब मैं तुमसे मिलता हूँ ना, you are like raw intellectual power. ये अभी करना है, ये solution है, ये problem है, ये मैंने कर दिया है, आप implement क्यों नहीं कर रहे हो? A lot of times what happens is, there is a lot of, one of the things that I think Kamalika very rightly pointed out, data is one of the vectors that you look at. You also look at a lot of other vectors in life, like anecdotally, how is the experience, right? Then probably from a quantitative point of view, how is that experience, right? Is it the right stage for me to take the decision, right? Is it relevant after 6 months or is it relevant after 5 months? I think वो context आपको develop करना पड़ेगा, right? Because जब आप एक lens से देखते हो ना, आपको problem लगता है कि मैंने solve कर दी, लेकिन वो problem in general ambiguous होती है. It has multiple other factors to it, right? तो आपको वही चीज I think we are consistently reiterating in the cohort क्योंकि हम discovery पे उतना focus करते हैं, right? I just wanted to add one thought, but I think what she answered is absolutely like beautifully put. Yeah, awesome. मैं next आता हूँ तासिन भाई पे. तासिन भाई, I'm just bringing you in. Give me a second. Yes, Tasin bhai, please, over to you.
Hi. How are you? First of all, great content. I've gone through most of your posts. You write so well. Such a clarity on fintech, right, in this space. My question to you, I've been in insurance space, US healthcare predominantly. When you talk about technology, and I see that you're also into Web 3.0, with cyber security and fraud being one of the major concerns, right, in fintech, how much do you see from technology standpoint that Web 3.0 and crypto, right, because government is also coming with its own digital currency, can put a tab on such frauds? And then is it only till financial transaction, or do you see this blockchain ledger technology going into other transaction of banking, like let's say you did Axis Bank's loyalty program, so transaction of that loyalty program through a blockchain technology? Do you see India moving ahead in Web 3.0 considering all of this?
Very, very interesting question. Short answer, no. And the reason being, so blockchain as a technology solves one very beautiful problem, which was the issue of double spending when it comes to digital money. But the challenge on that front is that it makes transactions that much more slower. So there is a trade-off over there. And in India, where we've gotten used to instant payment at scale, thanks to UPI, yes, the double spending problem is there, but that friction that it's introducing blockchain over there, I don't think it's justified over there. People are just not going to want to adopt in that case. So that's why I don't think when it comes to payments, blockchain is going to have an impact over there. But when it comes to things that in general take a lot of time, like for example, if you're saying fractional real estate on the blockchain, you want to track those transactions. Typically, any of these transactions anyways take somewhere between a month to, a quarter. So there, if I'm saying that there's going to be a digital ledger that's going to help you to finish those transactions within a few minutes, you'll have a wait time of max 30 minutes, you'll be okay with that. Because this process was anyways taking so much time before this. I'm cool with that. But when it comes to payments, and loyalty points are also used as a proxy for payments, by the way, it's going to be a very hard sell over there to use blockchain in that case. So that I don't see blockchain having an impact, at least in India, where we already have a real-time payment system through round the clock working at scale? No.
Then why
There
do
was another question you asked. Sorry, I forgot.
digital currency also India has introduced, right? If that is the lacking thing.
E-rupee. Yeah, I also wanted to hear about that.
Yeah. So again, e-rupee, let's see what kind of a problem statement can it solve. Let's start with that. Is it solving for real-time payments? For retail, we already have that. So that's a no. But when it comes to B2B payments, which was anyways, it was very much reliant on NEFT and RTGS, which had a slight lag over there. Can it solve the problem over there? Yes. What is then the next question is, then what is the drawback that is there? Or what is the constraint that we'll have to work with over there? There it's going to be it's not going to be a volume game at all. It's going to be a value game when it comes to B2B. So even if say one packet gets dropped in the network, is there a reconciliation mechanism that's present on the ledger that makes sure that we're able to use some sort of a fuzzy logic to arrive at that final conclusion, that final amount? Because even one packet, if it gets dropped, it's going to be a huge impact for B2B customers over there. So that is again, and there are blockchain, by the way, has that inbuilt into it. So that's a problem that's also solved over there. So on the B2B side, and also in the government to business side and the business to government side, I do see blockchain having like a great play over there. Imagine something. So right now we already have e-invoices, right, for businesses that is there. But now imagine that your payments could also happen, other tax returns could also happen via the blockchain's digital ledger that's there. That's also a great thing, right? You don't have to keep logging into the portal every day. Sometimes the portal crashes also to figure out if you're getting that return or not. It's going to happen in near real time in that case. So there, yes, I definitely see a good. So business to business, government to business, and business to governments is like an area where I do see this playing out.
But not in the retail.
Yeah, not in retail space.
Awesome. So, Tasin bhai, I'll remove you and I'll bring Sukanya. Sukanya, why don't you? And Nikhil bhai, I'll reach out to you. And Kamalika, once more, I think 10 more minutes we would need of your time.
Yes, absolutely. I'm loving the question. So, yes.
Yeah. So, Sukanya, please, over to you. Yeah.
Hi, Kamalika.
Hi.
Thanks for coming to our cohort as a guest lecture. So I am a software engineer with no product sense and no MBA degree, and just this cohort is the only thing I'm doing for the first time. So like you are going to be an entrepreneur or you are already an. So if I want to give an interview for your company, what will you look for in my candidature? Why will you hire me? Like what all you will look for in my resume or portfolio?
That's a great question. So I think even when I go back, and so I'm basically starting up with my mentor, and whenever I go back to Preeti and we have these conversations, the one thing that's very important for us is this person able to logically structure things out? Because the problem we are trying to solve for today, there is nothing that we can imitate and be like, acha, haan, theek hai, there's a ready-made playbook that I can try implementing at my end. So everything that we do every day is it's very arbitrary, yaar. It's like there's no way that we can figure out where's like the only thing we can do is to figure out where to place our feet next. That's about all that we can do. But to do that also, you need to be able to assess whether this is a shaky ground or not a shaky ground, right? So if Sukanya is coming to interview with me and I'm throwing absolutely random things at her, how is she able to? Is she dodging? Is she able to dodge it right or catch it right? Is she able to make sense of that and figure out what to do with it next? Essentially what I'm looking for is A, agility. You need to have that presence of mind and that agility over there. And B, you need to be able to make logical sense over there. And the third thing, which I think is very important, is that more than just wanting ownership, you should be willing to take up that accountability. So essentially that happens only when you're able to buy into the vision that we are trying to build over here. So it's going to be if you do interview with us, it's going to be, trust me, a very offbeat sort of an interview process. It's not going to be a typical product management where I'm trying to tell you that this is a problem statement, give me a business case for it, tell me how will you prioritize and stuff like that. None of that is going to happen over there. So yeah.
And one more thing I will like to say, coming from a Bengali middle class family where parents and in-laws, like today they are asking for marriage, next year in 1 year they will ask for childbirth and all. Coming from those demotivating backgrounds, sometimes people like you in LinkedIn, your post motivate us a lot to go through our career and achieve our vision, ignoring all of this family issues.
So I'm trying to call my dad into the video. He's refusing.
Please call him. We'd love to
touch wood, I keep saying this every time, but I really won the parent lottery. Like my parents have been very supportive, like all through. Of course, they too went through the phase where, when I was turning 28, they wanted me to get married and all of that. And there was a lot of pressure. But heart, very supportive through all the decisions that I've taken. Like, okay, this is something I've never said in a public forum, but I had a very serious relationship and I went through a very bad breakup. But my parents have been my pillar of support. The only reason I could get out of that emotional funk was thanks to my dad. They've been so supportive for me in everything that I do. And when I finally told my mom that, you know what, I'm quitting my job and I'm going to be doing this, she's like, oh, you've always been saying women finance since 2020. Acha, theek hai, kar lo, but don't come and ask us for money, you know? So that's like, that's like
How
the
is it
only
that you got motivated to leave a very secure job and then trying for something new? With this is a very big risk, right? Taking you will not get any more monthly salary, a backup, so everything has to be yours.
Very true. But this again goes back to the entire thing that I was saying, right? I can't be in a place where I feel complacent. That's I think something that's been just ingrained into me. For me, and this is something that literally we've been trying to do since, and I've been doing it in a very small scale. So I've been having like, cohorts of 5-6 women where I've been sharing my Excel, my financial management Excel sheet that I share with them. But at scale, you do need to take that plunge. Like if I want to reach out to lakh women, I can't be doing these five people cohorts, for long. It's not sustainable at all. And I need to make that plunge if I really do believe in this. So that's, I think, Sukanya, what worked for me.
I think I just wanted to add one point. As Spider-Man's Baba says, with great power comes great responsibility. Yeah. So next, I would just one last question, which is Nikhil bhai. I'll just remove the spotlight. Yes, please, Nikhil bhai, go over to you. Yeah.
Thank you, Shravan. Hi, Kamalika. Thank you for sharing your journey. I think we all have learned great things from those journey. So my question is about fintech. So for most of us, fintech is a very new place. Okay, we know a thing about SaaS, how the things work, and what are different roles we get as a product manager. But in fintech, what are the different technologies a PM works on, and what skills are needed for those roles? And I think you already answered my next question. What do you see fintech in a future? So I think that was already covered. So yeah.
Just to re-clarify, Nikhil, are you asking that for a fintech product managers, what are the skills that are needed, or are you asking generically, like what are the skills?
No,
Yeah.
so I am specific to fintech. What
Sure.
are the different subdomains in fintech? For example, there is a payment gateway. There is kind of a one subdomain. What are the such different subdomains, and what will the skill required for the different domains? Is what I am trying to understand.
Perfect. So let's first kind of decompose what fintech really means. So fintech is basically you using technology to deliver financial services. That's essentially what fintech is trying to do, right? So when it comes to that, what are the different types of financial services that are available? Like I remember there was someone before this who was from the insurance domain. So that is one. You mentioned payment gateways. Payments as a whole, payment gateway is one part of it, but payments as a whole is another domain that's there. You have credit as another subdomain over there. You have other banking services like the savings and the investment products that you have, the deposit products that you have, bunch of other things that are there. Taxes, again, another area of financial services. So basically any transaction, any financial or economic transaction that you're doing, if you're using digital means to disburse that transaction, that counts as fintech. Now coming to your question on what should I learn or what should I understand in order to become a fintech PM, I think this is where I was very lucky to be a part of fintech, because you're essentially using financial services as your base. And when it comes to any financial services, whatever the regulators say is the law. There is literally no gray area when it comes to finance at all, because you're playing with other people's money, other people's savings, other people's insurance over there. You can't afford to go wrong over there. So if you are, let's say that you've narrowed down on payments, then the best thing for you to do would be to understand India's payment landscape today. And there's no better textbook available than the publications that NPCI comes up with. Same with if you have to say account aggregator, like even now I keep going back to my ex-teammates and telling them the Rebit specifications of account aggregator has to be your Bible. You will like the amount you learn from there once you understand everything that's there over there. And sometimes we would have conversations with the regulators where I would randomly open up a page in their website and be like, see, this is what you guys have said. And they're like, how do you know all of this? I'm like, because I have read through your entire thing. Like I'm going to write an exam tomorrow. My board exams are there tomorrow. And this is the syllabus for me. So obviously I have to know all of this. So I think that's one great thing about fintech, because most of this, you have a base to start off with. You know what you have to learn if you want to get into one of these spaces. So yeah, and I do hope you will also take up account aggregator, because trust me, open finance is like a very, very big thing over there.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. So, Kamalika, the last request that I have from you is we are going to take a group selfie, right?
Yes,
That is something that is very
absolutely.
important. Guys, please open your
Yes.
videos. और नहीं दिखाया अभी तो शक्ल दिखाओ. मेरी इतनी अच्छी है, तुम सबकी तो बहुत अच्छी है. So let's do that. Omar bhai, other people, please, I want most. Yeah, awesome. So we'll go at 3. 1, 2, 3. Cheese. Awesome. बहुत बढ़िया. So the last thing that I want to do, Kamalika, is once again, I'm super grateful. Thank you very much for taking
Thank you for having me. I love the questions over here.
Honestly, good karma to you. I think these kids, the next thing that I want all of you to go do is आज 5,000 फॉलोअर बढ़ाने हैं कमलिका के, मुझे नहीं पता ठीक है, तो एक पोस्ट लिखो, क्या सीखा, टैग हर. She should at least have a hard time writing for 1-2 hours, because that's the amount of notifications that she should get, right? I want to do that, but other than that, I'll just stop the recording. Give me a second.